Hello and welcome to another video tutorial for the Lightroom Learning Group. And in today's video tutorial, I wanted to show you how I create a black and white image from a color image. So of course, all of the photos that we take these days are in nice, vibrant color, but sometimes we might run across an image such as this one from Saugatuck Dune State Park that we feel might be better in black and white. So how do we go about doing that? Well, there are of course multiple ways to do that. You can simply tap the V key on your keyboard. That will desaturate the image and take it to black and white mode. Or you can use one of the multitude of presets that you have with Lightroom. Or you could use one of the new profiles that are now available in Lightroom Classic CC. And these appear to be very nice starting points. I would suggest the profiles over the presets. However, I have not really worked much with the profiles yet. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you the way that I am accustomed to creating a black and white photograph. So to me, the best way to do that is to first analyze the image in color. I'll just kind of look at an image, see what colors are dominant in an image. So for instance, this image has a lot of blue in the sky, a little bit of green and yellow in the dune grass, and probably some oranges in there as well. Not a whole lot of red in this photo. So that's just kind of my quick color overview of this image. Then I will go ahead and tap the V key on my keyboard to go to black and white mode. And what I'll then do is go down to the B and W panel. Now, if you're not used to seeing the B and W panel, well, that's probably because you're accustomed to seeing the HSL panel. I'll go ahead and I'll tap the V key on my keyboard again to go back to the color mode, and I want you to see what happens to this panel here. I'll hit the V key, and now it changes back to HSL/color. I'll open that and you can see that I have all of these different attributes that I can change while in color, the luminance, the saturation, and the hue, and I can do that on a color by color level. Now if we go back to the black and white mode by tapping the V on our keyboard, well, now we only have what's called a black and white mix. You can adjust the different levels of each color channel, but you can't do all the separate things such as saturation, luminance, all that. So this is how I go about creating a black and white image. As you recall earlier, I quickly evaluated this photo and I decided there's a lot of blue in the sky. So I'll go down to the blue channel here and I will just kind of adjust this to the left and to the right, and we can see that that will be adjusting a lot of my sky. All right, I'm not seeing a lot of magenta or purple, so if we adjust those, you can see that not much is changing there or in the purple either. The aqua, there might be a little bit in the water, and yeah, you can see in the water and a little bit in the clouds as well, that as I move that aqua slider, that adjusts that area there. And I can just double tap on these to set them back. The green, I think that'll be a lot in the tree, the main tree here. There was some green there. So if I adjust that, you can see that that's adjusting there. And it's even adjusting some of the dune grass as well. Now I think there's going to be quite a bit of yellow. And you can see there that as I do that, that dune is really adjusting. And the orange, same thing. There's a lot of orange and yellow, of course, in that dune grass and in that sand. So what I want to do now is I kind of want to separate this image. So I'm going to have the sky area here that I want to work on. And then I'll have the dune area that I want to work on. And then I'll follow that up with the water and the tree. So the first thing that I'll work on is that sky. I want that sky to have a nice bit of contrast. I want it to be nice and dark. That's just kind of how I'm envisioning this final black and white. So I'll just grab this blue slider. I'm going to drag down and I'm going to get that sky nice and dark. So I like that right about there. Give it a nice dramatic sky. And I'll go ahead and I'll zoom in here and I'll just kind of pan around just to make sure I'm not getting too much fringing going on here, and that's looking pretty good to me. So that sky looks pretty nice there. And now I want to go ahead and I want to adjust the Dune. And I want to have a nice contrast in this image. Black and white photos are all about the contrast. So I want this Dune contrasting with the sky. So I'm going to have the sky nice and dark just like it is there. I'm going to adjust these yellows up along with the oranges as well. So we'll bring these up, maybe the yellow some more. And it's important when you're doing this to pay attention when you're working on the lighter area of your image, to pay attention to those highlights. You don't want the highlights to get too high, all right? The shadows will come by later and we'll potentially adjust those. So right now we're just kind of trying to get kind of a basically appealing image. Nothing that's going to be final, but just something that looks pretty good to the eye. So far that's looking pretty good to me. And now I want to adjust the water here. So that was in that aqua channel. So I'll take that down and then I'll take that back up. And to me that looks much better when it's down. But if you can see in the clouds there, that looks like it may be creating a little bit of issue with the tree branches here. So I want to take that up a little bit to remove some of that, but we'll still keep it down to have a nice contrast. We'll zoom back out. All right, so right now that's looking pretty good to me. All right, now again, this is just the adjustment of the color levels here. All right, we'll go ahead and we'll adjust the green a little bit. We'll see what we want to do with that. I think I'm going to like that to be dark. We'll take it up, but I think I'm going to prefer it to be dark right there and create a nice contrast there. So I have the sky looking pretty much where I want it to. I might take that down a little bit more. That looks better to me right there. All right, so now I have this image. It's in black and white. I have adjusted these color levels to where I want them. So I can go ahead and I'll turn those off, and that will take us back to the original black and white conversion. I'll turn it back on, and you can see, to me, that's a pretty good improvement. This is much more appealing to me than this is here. This looks rather flat and kind of dull, whereas this really starts to pop. So now we're going to go back and we're going to adjust our basic panel here. All right, so I want more pop in the sky here. I want these clouds to be a little bit brighter while not making the blue in the sky any brighter. We'll see if we can achieve that. So I'll go ahead, and that's going to be in the highlights, of course. So I'll take those highlights up. We'll see what happens here. So I want to mess around with that a little bit. I want to make sure I'm not adjusting too much of this area down here. I'm really only focused on the sky. And so I may end up going to one of the different adjustment options, such as the gradient tool or maybe the brush tool. So I'll take those down, and I just want to be careful here. So I think that's looking pretty good right about there. And now let's go ahead and adjust our shadows. So again, I just want to take my shadows up. We'll see where that takes us. So that's really affecting this portion of the image quite a bit over here, which of course is not surprising, and then a little bit down here as well. But I'll take that back down a little bit. Again, it is all about the contrast when you are dealing with a black and white photo. Now for the whites and the blacks, I'm going to go ahead and use that shortcut that we talked about before by setting them automatically. I'll hold down the Alt on my keyboard and then double click on the whites. And that is not going to modify anything on the whites. And then the blacks, it's not going to do anything there as well. Because I was hitting the Alt key when I should have been hitting the Shift key. So I'll hit the Shift key and then double click on the whites again. And that definitely went too far. but we'll take it down a little bit. So I feel the whites went too high and the blacks went too low. Take those up. So that didn't work out in our favor there, but that's okay. It's worth a try. All right, so I'm still not entirely happy with how this is turning out. I don't really like the sky as of yet. So what I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and use my brush tool. And I'll take the exposure up. And I'll take the highlights up as well. I'm going to take the flow down a little bit. And then I'm just going to kind of paint in the white of the clouds here. All right, so I'll go ahead and I'll do that now, and we'll see what that gives us. So we'll take that out a little bit, maybe back up a little bit there. Bring it down in here. And then over here, really brighten up these clouds. So I want to have really just a lot of contrast in here. So I like how that's looking. I want to brighten up these clouds over here. I'm going to lower my brush size a little bit by hitting the left bracket key there. And we'll brighten that up. And I like how that is looking there. I want to make this little strip here a little bit brighter, so I'm going to shrink that brush even farther. And we'll just kind of go in here and brighten this up a little bit as well. So that's looking pretty good to me there. I think the darkness of the sky here is pretty good. I don't want it to go too dark, not for this particular image, so I'm going to leave it where it is. So I like how the sky is looking there. I'm going to say that the sky is done at this point. So now I'll go in, and the other important aspect of this image is the dune. All right, that was the next step when I broke it down. Remember, it went sky, then dune, water, and tree. So I want to work on the dune here. And I think I'll work on that with the brush as well. So I'll go ahead and I'll click on my brush tool again. So I'm going to kind of break this dune down here. I'm going to have this portion over here. I'll focus on this. I want to raise the contrast here. All right. So we will up the contrast on our brush by quite a bit. And we'll take our shadows. We'll drop those maybe a little bit. The highlights up. The overall exposure, I want to raise that a little bit. I'll put that to about a 0.3 there. I'll make my brush a little bit bigger. And I'll just start brushing in this area here. We'll see what kind of results we get. So as I brush, we'll see what happens. It's not much. We'll take our flow back up to 100. And so this brush is not really working out for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. We'll take that away. We'll up the clarity and the dehaze. Take our exposure up a little bit more. All right, now I'll try that again. See what we come up with here. Keep painting in this area here. Again, I want to create a lot of contrast in here. Turn that off and then back on. And I'm starting to like that. This little portion here, I'm going to go in with a new brush. And I just really want to make that quite a bit brighter here. So I'll create a new brush stroke here. And I like how that's looking there. So far, I am pretty happy with this area here, and I'm happy with the sky. We'll move on to the rest of this portion of the dune here. I'll do that with another new brush. Now this, I kind of want the exposure to come down a little bit. I want to make that dune a little bit darker. I want the contrast to be elevated again. That's fine. The highlights can come down. The shadows can go back to 0. And I'll keep the clarity and the dehaze where they are. Now let's just see what happens when we have this brush here. Bring this in and just start painting really wherever I see the sand. We'll see how we like that. Well, that's okay, I suppose. I'll take and I'll adjust that a little bit more. I just feel like I'm not getting quite enough contrast or definition there. I feel like when the exposure is down, it kind of gets muddy. And then as we go up, it just kind of washes out a little too much. So I wonder what happens if you want to raise the shadow a little bit. Take the highlights down. And maybe bump them back up a little bit. Take that up like that. I think right about there is actually where that dune is looking best. So that, now this whole dune area here is looking pretty good to me. I want to adjust this dune area here. I'll go ahead and I'll hit new again on my brush. I want the exposure to come up a little bit on that area of the dune. Again, I'm focusing on this area right here. I want the contrast up along with the clarity and the dehaze a little bit. I want those to really start to pop. I'll bring the exposure up a little bit more yet, about there. And then I'll take the shadows up a little bit as well, and I'll start brushing here. I'll take my brush and shrink it down a little bit and start painting here. And that's not looking too bad at all to me. I like the effect we're getting there. I'm actually go ahead and paint in here as well. That's kind of like that little pop there. I'm going to lay down another brush stroke right here in this shadow area just to see what that does down there. Maybe made it a little bit better. Not a whole lot of difference there, but I think overall that this dune area here is looking pretty good. I kind of want to make that maybe just a little bit brighter. So what I want to do is I want to create another new brush here, and I'm just going to take really this top portion here. I want to make this quite a bit brighter. That's a little too bright. I'll take it down a touch. Just want to have a nice bit of contrast there. I like that. And now I'll move on to the water. Again, I think the best tool for that is going to be the brush. So I'll go ahead and I'll have a new brush here. And I want the water to be, full of contrast here, full of pop. So I'm going to bring the exposure down a little bit again. I actually want to darken that water a little bit. We'll keep the contrast up. We'll take the highlights up and the shadows down, and we'll keep the clarity and dehaze where it's at. I'll make my brush a little bit bigger by hitting that right bracket key, and now we'll go ahead and we'll lay this brush down here, and we'll see what this does for us here. And I'll make that smaller as I get into these smaller areas here. Brush over that water there. I think that water is actually looking pretty good. Take that exposure down a little bit more. That's too far. That's too far. Take it back up. Right about there, I'm liking that. So I think the water's good. It's nice and dark against the sky and dark against that dune there. So now I have this tree here to deal with and these trees here. And then I think we'll be doing pretty good. So again, I'm going to come in with the brush tool. I'm going to hit new here. And so I want this tree here to be, well, I think a little bit darker. I'm not entirely sure, but I think I want it to be a little bit darker. I'm going to take the contrast down. There's going to be plenty of contrast in that tree as it is. We'll take the highlights down and the shadows up. And we'll go ahead and we'll just start painting here. So this tree I want it to be just a little bit darker than it is right now. And I think that's not going to be dark enough, but we'll see. Just keep painting on the branches. We'll paint the trunk a little bit there. I'm not being really terribly careful here. I could zoom in and do a better job than that if I wanted to, or we could add the masking. So I think I'm going to want this tree to be right about there in that darkness range. But you can see in here, we will zoom in, that this is just kind of looking fairly undesirable in here. So I'm going to delete that brush stroke there. And I will go ahead and I'll turn on my mask. I'm going to actually just turn on auto mask is all I'm going to do for this here. And now I'll just go back to painting. And we'll see how this works for us now. I'm going to zoom in. And this is where it gets kind of tedious. I'll just keep painting along the branch here. Make this nice and dark. Darken that and this in here and up here. And we'll move over to these branches here. Of course, when you're in this tool here, you can use your space bar to get the hand tool and move around. We'll keep throwing down some of this darker brush strokes here. I feel like we missed some in here. And this video is getting pretty long as my computer's starting to slow down, but we'll zoom out a little bit here. And now we can see that this tree is looking pretty good. It's nice and dark against that sky. I'll take it up just a little bit. That's going to help with some of that fringing that we were seeing there. I'll take it back down a little bit there. So that's contrasting nicely against the sky. You're getting the water contrasting with the sky and the dune. I think overall we're looking pretty good. I want to just brighten up this area here. So I think what we'll do is we'll just use the radial tool here. We'll click and drag to just brighten up this whole area right here. I'll hit invert. And then I'll up the exposure. Those shadows got nice and high there. And that really did a pretty good job right there. I'm not terribly concerned with this area here. It's not really a main point of focus. All right, so here we go. This, I think, we're going to call good. So now we have this black and white image that, of course, started off as color. The tree, you'll have to excuse the tree. I think if we had more time, we would have gotten more into detail here so we didn't have the fringing in there, and maybe a color mask or luminance mask would have worked better as opposed to just the quick mask option that we ended up using. But I think when you look overall at the tones of this image, you have a nice tone here in the sky with the dark blue sky that was once blue, and then contrasting with the white clouds, and then the dark water with the lighter dune area there. So we'll go ahead and we'll turn off that black and white again down there, and we'll see what happens here. So now this is looking at the black and white though with our basic adjustments, and then you can see if we turn back those color adjustments on again, well, now you get that nice appearance there. So that's how I like to use the black and white function of Lightroom. I think it is very helpful to come in and use the different color channel sliders to achieve the black and white look that you're going for. Now, something similar may be available in the presets or in the profiles, but this is a really good way to learn how color affects the black and white portions of your image. And it's a really good way for when you're out shooting later to kind of visualize how something might look in black and white. Because if you recall, the first time we saw this image, we saw that there was a lot of blue in the sky, a lot of yellow and orange in the dune, and then we are now able to see what those look like in black and white. So it's very good to think of your black and white image actually as color, and then associate that with these channels over here. So there you go, guys. Hopefully you found that helpful. Hopefully you can go in and convert an image to black and white and use these channel sliders here just to kind of give you more control over the different tones of the image. As always, if you have any questions, shoot me a message, post in the Facebook group, or just leave a comment on this post. All right, guys, we'll talk to you later.